Welcome to the Fresh and Safe podcast, brought to you by the Fresh Produce Safety Centre. I'm your host, Damien Farrelly. This pilot series is being delivered via the Horticulture Food Safety Initiative project, which is co-funded by Hort Innovations Frontiers, retailers, regulators, and industry partners. We're here to share fresh ideas and practical insights to elevate food safety in the produce supply chain. Whether you're a grower, a food safety specialist, service provider, or part of the broader food safety ecosystem, join us as we navigate the evolving landscape of fresh produce food safety in New Zealand, Australia, and around the world. In this week's episode, we have a panel discussion from global leaders in food safety, which is recorded live from the 2025 International Fresh Produce Safety Symposium, held in Sydney back in July. The theme of the symposium was Advancing Fresh Produce Safety, with the call to action being innovate, adapt, and secure. For this panel discussion, I was joined on stage by our keynote speaker, Jim Monaghan, Director of the Centre for Crop and Environmental Science at Harper University in the UK. Keep it clean was Jim's simple yet highly effective message for growers, given how difficult it is to decontaminate fresh produce. He emphasised the importance of agreeing on industry best practice, taking a common sense approach, and delivering training to bridge the gap between science and implementation. I am also joined by Dr. Phil Bremer, Professor in the Department of Food Science at the University of Otago in New Zealand, and Ben Hoodless, a business principal and consultant at ElementAG. So we have an Irishman, an Englishman, a Kiwi, and an Aussie coming together, not to start a dad joke, but to reflect on the two-day symposium by discussing their key takeaway messages and their thoughts on priorities for advancing fresh produce food safety over the coming years. The format here is just going to invite each of our panellists to just give a quick overview of their reflections of the last couple of days, and then we'll open up to you guys to ask them what's on your mind. So, Jim, over to you.
Right. Thank you very much. Well, the first thing I've got to say, I'm summing it up from a UK perspective, and I'm really upset because I'm a POM, but I can't find anything to whinge about. And I do want to say thank you so much, because I came in here and I knew 2 people, I think 3 people, and I'm going away knowing 20, 30. I found it a really friendly experience, so thank you very much. And I was thinking at lunchtime, I nipped off to my room to have a think about it. I was trying to consider where you are now compared to, say, UK, the same situation in the UK. And you've got so many things that are just the same. So what we talked about auditor training, when I was working with Red Tractor, that was like the number one, standards, are they too tough? Are we copper bottomed? Are we gold plated? There's always that challenge. And then it's great having standards written down, but if the auditors are not able to deliver the support in a way, I don't mean advice, but the support through the audit, then that's a problem. So you all know what a good auditor looks like. You all know what a bad auditor looks like. That's just the same at home. One thing I'd say is you have a particular challenge. We are a bit further down the line. I don't know whether it's a good or a bad thing. Well, it is both good and bad. We have consolidated a lot from many small growers to a few. An example would be the British Iceberg Growers Association was something. In the 1980s, there was 40, 50 growers. There's now probably 2 growers will deliver 80% of iceberg lettuce in the UK, and there's maybe another 2 or 3 which are just filling in the gaps. And that's very different when you look at it from a risk assessment, when you look at it from a food safety perspective, because they employ people whose full-time job is food safety and maybe internal auditing. When you go to a family farm, who can be really great, but you might have 2 people, the mum and the dad, but that's just one of the many things that they're doing. So I think that's a challenge that's, I wouldn't want to underestimate what that's like for you in that environment. Just a few things I've picked up. One, hazard-led or risk-led. That's come up multiple times, just in Damien's sum up of what we were looking at there. You saw hazard versus risk a number of times. And that came back, I thought SP's, can't see where SP's gone, but the most recent talk, when he was talking about black and white or shades of grey. And in a way, hazard's black and white and risk is shades of grey. And if we can't eliminate, I really took away as low as reasonably achievable. I thought that's a great way for me to start verbalizing that issue. So I think hazard versus risk was really important. That came up as well in responding to crisis. Risk communication is difficult. Hazard communication can lead to people going off, maybe going off a bit too soon and getting very anxious about things. And a final one I'd want to say was I picked up a number of times a community approach. And this community, this food safety community that you're all part of, is key in delivering what you're needing. It's upskilling current people in the sector, also, very sensibly growing your own. And that's really key. I really was taken by the internship for auditors, and I'm going to take that home and see what we can do. But one last thing I want to say is, and I've chatted to a couple of people about this, and I'm the same, is fresh produce is like a door with no window. When you open the door and you go through, most of us in this room have gone, wow, fresh produce is great. I'm not going back through that door to dairy or arable or whatever. I don't know how you put a window in that door. And that, how do we do that to universities? How do we do it to other people in the food sector, but they really don't consider produce? Or you could even say there's another door beyond that which goes into auditing, QA systems, etc. How do we show people that actually this is a great career? You can travel the world, you can go newness, you can see lots of things. I don't know the answers. So it's a door with no window. We've got to put a window in it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Great summary of the couple of days we just had. Phil, your thoughts?
Thank you. I've been sitting here thinking back to the conference last year, and Frank Yanis asked the question, are we winning in our fight against bacteria? And his response was no, we're not. And I guess, why aren't we? And just as I was hearing Jim's talk yesterday and the previous other talks, it became obvious that growing fresh leafy greens or produce is a tough business to be in. I work across many sectors and provide advice to dairy industry, etc. And this is an industry we are at the mercy of the elements. The environment's changing. We're seeing different risks occurring, new pathogens, different hazards, I should say, new pathogens occurring, pathogens that weren't here, extending their range. We have challenges around the workers, the workforce. So it's very hard to actually understand where the contamination is coming from and how to control it. And unlike many other industries, you don't have interventions that can effectively eliminate the hazard once it occurs on the crop. And this makes it very difficult. And I was sort of reflecting back, well, in my 40 years in the industry, why haven't we made a difference? And then I sort of reflected back a little bit longer, and so I'm going to ask you guys some questions. So who knows how long humans have been on Earth for? Yell out, how many thousand years? What was that, sorry? 300,000 according to Google, but anyway. Okay. So how long have plants been around for?
Oh, millions.
50 million years. Okay, here's the big one. How long have bacteria been around for? 3.5 billion years. Yes, so they're very well adapted. They're very well adapted to survive. They're very well adapted to grow on plants. And then we're trying to find ways to control them. So it's a big challenge. I mean, it's very important we don't underestimate that challenge. I was asked the question about yesterday, how do you get growers to comply, to take the measurements, to fill in the sheets if they don't see the benefit to it? And the answer is really in two parts. You need to be able to demonstrate the benefit of data, and data is important, and it's going to become increasingly important as we move forward. This is data in its widest sense. This is data about growing conditions, wind direction, rainfall. It's data on the pathogens you find, and I mentioned this briefly yesterday, but if you collect an E. coli or a Salmonella and Campylobacter, that is important information, and it's vital to that, to my mind, it's vital to that bacterial strain be treasured, to be put aside, ideally whole genome sequenced. If you can't afford to do it now, put it on ice and we'll put it in the freezer and test it at a later time. That organism can give you so much information about persistence, can help in source attribution. And we're seeing this being done extensively in the dairy industry and the seafood industry. And I think the produce industry really needs to catch up and understand the importance of the data that they collect every day and value it. And as AI and digital systems evolve, this will hopefully become easier.
Thank you, Phil. Over to you, Ben.
Thanks, Phil. So I'm coming in with half of the conference or the symposium experience. So, but Fazana said this morning, the first point from yesterday's recap was the risk starts in the field. And I thought that was really, for me, being a guy that spent more time in the field than in a packing shed, that really resonated with me. And it was really interesting to hear the presentation around manure and the research that's happening, as well as, you know, how technology can help us to understand, monitor and understand what's happening in the field. So I think if the risk starts in the field, there's a lot happening and a lot of opportunity to better understand how we can figure out what's happening there and mitigate those risks. So I think that's been a real takeaway for me. I really like the discussion on the assurance schemes. I think of the Richard's history on the topic, and then Jane's willingness to, you know, just to be really candid about that it's not perfect and that there's more work that needs to be done and work to take it forward is to me that sounds like I guess a group of food safety practitioners who are willing to take on the challenges and improve, continuous improvement. So I thought that was really nice to go through that and look forward around what Fresh Care are doing and what other assurance schemes can do to kind of you know, keep evolving and using technology to do that. Over my career, or the latter part of my career, talent's been one area, particularly when I was working for IFPA. And I think the window to the door, Jim, you mentioned, you know, I think there's been some really good progress made here around that with some of the industry associations, with some of the work that you know, that people are doing to try and attract people into the industry. I think we suffer, as a fresh produce industry, we suffer from a very large row cropping country, a very large beef and livestock industry, and a very large agricultural banking sector that seem to be sometimes the attractive or the first place to go as a graduate. So it's up to us to show them the door and invite them in. But I think the idea that we need to get to people at a younger stage than when they're about to leave university, that to bring them on the journey around the importance of fresh produce in diet and human health and all those things are critical. So people like Catherine Valicia, the work that she does, the IFPA, different organizations to try and grab people along their journey of study to bring them into the fresh produce industry is critical. So we've got to keep working there. So they're my 3 points.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. Alrighty. We're moving into the Q&A session. I'm going to hop in on the seat beside you guys, make a bit more of a conversation. I've got a mic. I'm good. You can have that. So while you guys are thinking of question to ask our panelists, I'll get the ball rolling with asking one of you, maybe all of you, where do you see as the biggest gap between science and what happens on farm?
I think that's almost a Phil one, because I think the biggest gap is we are now in a position to measure risk, so which is going to be to deal with the pathogen species we're interested in. We're not quite on at the ability to do it in real time. When we can get it to real time, then I think that's going to be a gap that's closed, and that'll be a game changer. And that's what I think the biggest gap is. What do you think, Phil?
One of the biggest gaps from a research point of view is actually translating what works in the lab to what works in a farm environment, and understanding the economics involved, the scale involved, and whether this can be done in a cost, or I guess it's a cost-effective manner or in a reasonable manner. This won't come as a surprise to you to hear, but it's important that researchers or scientists have a good understanding of what happens on farm, and really the only way you can get this is to go out and see it happening. And there are, as you probably all aware, many scientists who've never been on a produce farm or any one of any sort of scale. And as an industry, you should perhaps invite them out there and try to support them. It works both ways. Scientists get criticised, or academics get criticised for being in their ivory towers, but I'm sure most of them would enjoy a day trip out somewhere, have a look around. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
That's a big one. Thanks, Phil. Ben, anything you'd like to add?
Look, my only comment would be I think the gap varies dramatically between the one end of the vertically integrated fresh produce companies, the big guys in one end, and then the very small operations. So when they go to the field trip, maybe they should not go to the shiny packing shed at Costa, and maybe go to the a smaller farm who is trying to manage all of these things on their own and understand at that level what the challenges are, because I think that there is a gap between different farm sizes and operations.
Yeah, very fair. We got any questions from the audience?
Thank you for that, and very interesting thoughts from everybody on the panel. We've heard a lot of things about where we are currently and what the gaps might be, but if we sat here in 10 years' time, where do you think we're at and how do we get there?
And in 10 years' time, you'll be battling more and more stringent regulations. You'll be having to justify land use and environmental sustainability more and more. There'll be increasing cost pressures. I'm sorry, it's all a bit depressing, isn't it? Leafy vegetables will still be seen as being important to the diet. There'll be an acceptance of AI and digitalization, robotics and iPads and all sorts of sensors will be in use. And compile it back to salmonella and listeria will still be a problem. E. coli will still be a problem. But we'll be doing things better. I'd like to say that produce will be safer, there'll be less risk, but I'm not that optimistic given what's happened over the last 40 or 50 to 60 years. So I'll pass it to Jim for a more positive.
I was going to actually say, well, I'm now going to be positive. Yeah. We'll still be growing crops in soil with environmental risks all around. So that's not going to change. We're not going to be vertically farming, no matter what space age options come up, because the sums don't add up. So I think we'll be doing, if you think 10 years, well, that's a long time. Well, what we're doing 10 years ago, the only major step change is going to be AI-led. I think that's going to be like not just just moving on progressively. I think that'll be big. And what I see in the world I'm in is automation is just outside, ready to come in. And I think that'll be, from a food safety perspective, be really interesting. What can we achieve by using automation, machine learning, vision systems? How could that be used? And there'll be things we haven't thought of that we will be doing. I don't know what they are yet, but I think there'll be a lot more automation. I think automation is going to be so much cheaper. I mean, just look at drones now compared to 5 years ago. So, yeah, I'm going to be positive. We're going to be still growing in the soil. There's going to be a lot of automation, and AI is going to be fundamental.
And there'll be no food safety risks?
Oh, there's always going to be food safety risks. But maybe we'll be in a position that when something goes wrong, you'll actually have more due diligence behind you, but things will still go wrong.
Thanks, guys. Sharon.
Probably following on with Ben's comment, how do we, a community of industry, scientists, laboratories, look at new innovations, so we do have a kill step, whether it's cold plasma, whether it's irradiation, or whether it's rapid diagnostics, we know it's out there, but no one's commercializing it. So what's the stopper there?
I think they're like the silver bullet that people have been looking for 20, 30 years. I mean, I've seen ozonation come and go. I've seen aqueous ozonation, gaseous ozonation, cold plasma, irradiation, and it's just too difficult. I think we'd have to. I think at the moment it doesn't work. It's not commercially ready. That's the, because if someone could crack it, people would be buying it. Can you imagine what would happen in the States with the, they don't have the highest levels of security within some of the factories. If they could stick that on the end, they'd be super happy. So if it would work now, people will be doing it. And so I don't think SB's here. Some of the stuff he's doing with cold plasma, and he got it to, from what I understood from his presentation, it sort of worked, but they couldn't commercialize it because it wasn't a viable proposition. So from what I see globally, it's not just waiting around the corner. People haven't cracked it yet.
My only thought on that would be, if you take the irradiation discussion, I would say, the supply chain, in particular retailers, are pretty conservative for good reason. The willingness to change is not high if there's something that already works, in most cases. When you lose synthetic chemicals or pesticides that solve a problem and they're gone, then the industry seems willing to adopt the next best thing. But until the existing incumbent product that is working fine, there seems to be that lack of desire to change, and that's, maybe that's conservatism. That's just it works, so why would we? We've got other things we need to do. But yeah, it seems like you actually need to remove something that works today to get the next innovation into place, which doesn't always make sense.
Yeah, thank you. Just continuing that, it's very much cost versus benefit. And something like, say, electrolyzed water, which was trialled in the States and at the time was deemed to be too energy hungry. In the future, if we get more sustainable sources of energy and a greater need or a greater food safety risk, then that technology may come again. But at the moment, I guess the industry itself is not seeing the need for it.
We talked a lot about communication, collaboration, shared responsibility in the last few days. So have you guys got any insight into what shared responsibility really looks like in practice, and potentially who should lead it?
From an outsider's perspective, and so how we've done it at home, I think it was you said it, Phil, food safety is not a competitive issue. So Woolies, Coles, Aldi, if one of you falls down, all three of you will lose sales. And it's the same within sectors. If one berry business falls down, all the berry businesses lose sales. So I think keeping that at the front of the mind makes that collaborative working much easier, I think. And from coming in, this is day 3 or 4, or is it night 3 or 4? I'm not entirely sure. But, the Fresh Produce Safety Centre, it feels to me like there's a role here. There's sort of you've got quite a unique situation. We don't have something like this in the UK. I'd be having these discussions in a sector like the British Leafy Salads Association, but I wouldn't be having it cross-sector in this way. And there's a lot that you can learn. But, I come back to PPP. You think of leafy, you think of berries, you think of melons. There's a lot of crossover. There are specific things as well, but there's benefits in coming together and sharing what you learned.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, I think in Australia, for example, each of the pig industry bodies, for instance, are all resourced very differently, depending on the size of the industry and how much funding they get. So I was having this discussion with Richard just in the break. It's who's best equipped to deal with the situation. If we're talking about an emergency recall, where does that person sit that can best mount that response? And that, I think that's probably just an industry discussion around, okay, well, where does the expertise lie? In which sectors can they respond, and in which ones could Fresh Produce Safety Centre be to take that role, or IFPA, or whoever the other industry associations are. So I think it needs to be, it needs to be a plan, maybe just a conversation around who's doing what, and hopefully it doesn't happen, but when it does happen, there's a sort of template ready to roll out.
Thanks, Ben. We reached the end of our panel conversation. Really good insights there, really good questions, giving us lots to think about. And I think we've digested a lot of information over the last couple of days. So I'm going to hand to Jim to just maybe give us that one takeaway message for everyone. If you only go away with one thing, what are they going away with?
No. Yeah. Oh, you called me out there because I had 3.
You can go.
Yeah, but I've covered it really. It's a special sector. It has unique challenges in the food business. You know, it's sometimes it's high care, sometimes it's low risk. Some of our products, the same product could go in through a low risk chain into the consumer. It could go to a high risk chain to the consumer. We don't make it easy for ourselves working in this sector. And I think that what we've heard over the last 2 days, I go away, reinforced in my opinion that it's a great sector to be in, but also that it will be better 10 years from now than it is at the moment. It's not bad now, but there's so much we can do. Some of them are small changes, but I think there's so much we can do to keep making it safer. So that's what I'd come away from the last 2 days, whether it's the sanitation, those advances we heard about yesterday, whether it's the work that SP's doing, which is underpinning a lot of the information we're hearing, that's what I've gone away with.
Oh, lovely summary. A lot we can do to make things safer. Thank you, Jim, Phil and Ben, for a really good discussion. Thanks, guys.